When it comes to some of the most popular dinosaurs from the late Cretaceous period, many of them have a reason for being as popular as they are. Triceratops has dozens of individuals and enormous horns on its head, and Tyrannosaurus, it has so many fossils that it's arguably the most studied dinosaur on Earth. However, one dinosaur is an interesting case, in that it's extraordinarily well known, but not very well understood. That dinosaur being Pachycephalosaurus. Today on Tate Minis, we'll be discussing some of the mysteries surrounding this bone-headed dinosaur and what it was using its iconic dome for. In this episode of Tate Minis, allow us to introduce you to Pachycephalosaurus. This animal was a medium-sized dinosaur from the Lance and Hell Creek formations, living alongside other famous dinosaurs such as T-Rex, Triceratops, and Ankylosaurus. What makes this dinosaur and its kin so intriguing to scientists is that they possess a thick dome of bone on the top of their skulls. Adult Pachycephalosaurus skulls could get up to 9 to 10 inches thick at the top of the dome. What was this dome for? Well, for many years, scientists thought that it was a simple answer. But as the years went by, new science made a once simple answer a complicated and confusing argument. To provide background and explain the usage of the dome, here's Russell Hawley.
The most distinctive feature of Pachycephalosaurs is the dome-shaped swelling on top of the head. Now, the purpose of this dome eluded people for quite some time. Interestingly, if you look at the pattern of bone cells inside, they radiate outward like the fibers on a slice of grapefruit, showing that it was being subjected to forces from the outside. An explanation was put forth by Peter Galton in 1971. He noted that if the head is lowered down, the dome is faced forward in a perfect ramming position. The muscles that hold the skull at right angles to the neck are very large and well developed, and the vertebrae then would have lined up into the perfect orientation for ramming. He saw Pachycephalosaurus as something like modern bighorn sheep, with males perhaps colliding head to head, competing for herds of females. Now, part of the problem with the headbutting hypothesis is that the dome of a Pachycephalosaur is not the ideal shape for ramming your opponent in the head. On a bighorn sheep, the horns are broad and flat and provide a large surface for contact, but on a Pachycephalosaur, the domes would have most likely struck glancing blows and maybe risk damage to the animal's face. It's been proposed that maybe these instead were used for ramming the opponent on the flanks or in the side, rather like a football player uses his helmet.
Later on, workers had cut into a Pachycephalosaurus dome and found that the cross-section had many pores in them that may have indicated a softer dome that could not handle any amount of stress. This same study also concluded that the outside of the skull dome had a mesh of fibrous structures that could have supported brightly colored skin, or for the more adventurous paleo-artists, large display structures. This hypothesis was still argued amongst scientists until the year 2013, when paleontologists looked at numerous Pachycephalosaurus skulls of varying ages, found a very strange but reoccurring pattern. Nearly all of these skulls show crater-like lesions of the skull domes, typically listing towards the back of the skull. Workers took this a step further and ran CT scans of Pachycephalosaurus skulls that were then subjected to stress tests and analyses that showed that Pachycephalosaurus domes were exceptional at absorbing shock and withstanding great amounts of force. This means that Pachycephalosaurus was likely headbutting, but not quite in the way that we expected. Because these lesions were on varying spots of the skull and not in the exact same spot every time, these animals were likely headbutting anywhere they could make contact, and were using the thick domes to protect their brains. With that study completed, one great mystery of Pachycephalosaurus was finally put to rest. But there's another, even more contentious mystery surrounding Pachycephalosaurus, that being its growth.
Every species of Pachycephalosaurus seems to have had its own distinctive pattern of domes and spikes. For example, this is Prenocephaly and Homalocephaly, both of them from the Nemegt Formation of Mongolia. And in this column, we have Pachycephalosaurus, Stygimoloch, and Dracorex, all from the Lance and Hell Creek formations of Montana, South Dakota, and Wyoming. These different patterns might have helped individuals recognize members of their own species to make sure that, for example, they weren't getting mixed up in the wrong herd. But there's another possibility. Perhaps this is the juvenile form of Prenocephaly, and maybe these three form a growth series as well. In this hypothesis, they'd start out with a flat skull and then grow a small, narrow dome that would eventually turn into a very large spherical dome in the adult.
Similarly to the purpose of the skull dome, this hypothesis was argued upon, and for the most part it still is. But in 2021, scientists noted that Stygimoloch appeared in the upper layer of the Hell Creek Formation. Due to the morphological and stratigraphic differences between these two, the distinction could be a case similar to that of Triceratops, where two different species or different morphs separated by time. This Pachycephalosaurus skull here at the Tate is likely a very full-grown adult because the spikes on the nose and the back of the skull are very small, and the skull cap is quite large, especially in its width. Most of the external bone layer has been eroded away, so the skull lesions used to define the headbutting strategy are likely not easily distinguishable, although there is a circular patch of something at the back, but whether this is battle damage or just erosion from the sands of time remains to be seen. Many dinosaurs are popular for how complete or well understood they are, but part of what makes dinosaurs capture our imagination is that there is a level of mystery to be solved. With Pachycephalosaurus, some of these mysteries have been. Some remain open, but just like with any dinosaur, there's always more to be uncovered and more questions to ask. We hope you've enjoyed this mini look at Pachycephalosaurus. For more information about our fossils and casts, be sure to scan the next code on your Tate Mini's guide sheet to lead you to our next video. See you next time on Tate Minis.